Coming up on the news this morning, I'm going to be looking at Manchester United's transfer trio targets. Fabrizio Romano has given 3 names Manchester United will be targeting this January transfer window, and United have got a new name for a potential sporting director, Dan Ashworth of Newcastle. I'll be giving all the details on who he is, what he could bring to Manchester United, and whether we will be going for him when Jim Ratcliffe comes in. But before all that, check the link in the description. We will be in Dublin for Stretford Paddock Live, our second ever live podcast. Me, Jay, Adam McCullough, Stephen Howson will be joined by the legend that is Wes Brown. The tickets are available in the description, so go down and check them out. Let's get into it. Welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe. This is the news. We are here at Old Trafford this morning. We've got loads of news to bring you. Fabrizio Romano has revealed some Manchester United transfer targets for January. We've also got a latest on some of the behind-the-scenes goings-on with the ownership. I'm going to say saga. There needs to be a word sort of greater than saga at this point. It's been over 12 months now. We know what's going on with Jim Ratcliffe, but we're still waiting for him to come in, and there's a potential new sporting director on the way as well. Let's get into that. Let's start with that before we get to those transfer targets from Fabrizio Romano. Reports coming out in the last few hours from multiple sources, Daily Mail, across the MEN as well, other different websites and publications reporting this, that Manchester United are targeting Newcastle technical director Dan Ashworth as a potential new sporting director. Now, what's your first question? Who the hell's Dan Ashworth? Good question. Well, he's worked around the Premier League, he's worked around the FA as well. He started off years and years ago in Peterborough, then he's worked at other different clubs. And before, the big jump for him was in 2012 when he moved to being head of elite development for the FA, which is where he brought in this so-called English identity, which who really knows what that means, but that was a big push to get the English national team, both men and women's, to start being successful again on the pitch, which obviously, we have seen that. More quarterfinals, more semi-finals, a final as well. Obviously not that overall success, but we've seen continued sustained success from the England men's team and the women's team winning the Euros as well, of course. He was a big part of that. From there, he then went to Brighton. He's done other jobs, and in 2022, we went to Newcastle to be their technical director. Now, obviously, so to me, it's always a sort of double-edged sword, isn't it? Yes, Newcastle have done really well, but also they got, Saudi money. I can't give all the credit to Dan Ashworth. They did just get given access to unlimited money. I know they haven't spent unlimited money, and they've spent actually pretty wisely, which is what we can give him credit for. The players they brought in, they've spent less than Man United since they got taken over. But obviously, one of the big reasons for Newcastle's upturn is this massive influx in money that came with the Saudi takeover. However, Dan Ashworth does seem to be a very sort of highly regarded talent. I say talent like he's 17 years old, but he's still sort of on the way up, I believe, in his career. And it's reported now that Ineos have made him their main target for United sporting director. This has come after other different rumours as well of Paul Mitchell. Other people have been mentioned in the name or in the fray for that job. And even just the structure of it has been rumoured. And, John Murtough might stay but might get shifted into another role. John Murtough might keep that role and they might make a new role above him. It's all still up in the air, of course, as we still don't even know when Jim Ratcliffe's going to be the new owner or the new partial owner of Manchester United and the new sort of controlling head of the footballing team. However, it does seem as though Dan Ashworth is a name to remember and to keep an eye on. And if you look at his track record, he's not one that's sort of, lumbered with kind of a list of very successful transfers like someone like Paul Mitchell is with the likes of Sadio Mane, etc. But he's someone that seems to have done a very good job everywhere he's been, which, again, is more than you can say for a lot of people that United have employed. We'll wait and see what goes on there. There are also reports, just as a little sort of addition to that, that the coming days is when we can expect to hear an announcement on the Jim Ratcliffe stuff. However, other people saying it's been delayed because of just how complex and detailed the technicalities of this 25% buyout are. We'll wait and see, and obviously anytime there's any breaking news on the Jim Ratcliffe takeover, we will bring it to you here first on Stretford Paddock. Again, That's Dan Ashworth, potential new sporting director at Manchester United. Now let's move on to the January transfer window. Whether it's Dan Ashworth, whether it's John Murtaugh, whoever it is, United can do with some reinforcements. We've seen just absolutely ravaged by injuries so far this season. And Fabrizio Romano has spoken about potential ins at Manchester United. He's mentioned 3 names. One is Daniel Malen, who plays for Borussia Dortmund. He's a Dutch winger/attacker. Had a very good goal-scoring record at PSV before he joined Dortmund, and he's sort of been pushed into the margins over there. Again, he's one of those names where he's an exciting player, he's dangerous, but he's not someone that's sort of absolutely nailed down a starting spot and pushed himself to be one of the sort of top strikers or top attackers in the world. And he's the sort of player that United, are looking at. Obviously, it's the January transfer window. We're not going to be getting a Kylian Mbappe here. It's going to be players who have either been sidelined or marginalised at the club they're at, or just need a bit of a change of pace, and Marlon would definitely fit that bill. The next one is Timo Werner, who we're all aware of. He played for Chelsea, started at Leipzig, went back to Leipzig. He's only played a handful of minutes this season, I think 300 minutes. So when you look at his numbers, I think it's 2 goals in 14 games this season. But when you consider that that's 2 goals in 300 minutes, it's not quite as bad, if you know what I mean. Obviously, he's not getting loads of goals. I think, obviously, the lack of minutes suggests, again, a lack of playtime, a lack of being the first choice at RB Leipzig. But he's sort of a known quantity, and for me, he's not a very exciting one. But you look at the fact that our front 3, or front 4 or 5 actually, if you want to bring Martial in and you want to bring Garnacho in there as well, have scored, I think, 3 Premier League goals all season. It's just not really enough, is it? And speaking of goals, Guirassy, who is Stuttgart's absolute weapon up front. I think he's 27 years old, and he's always been a sort of a decent-ish striker, 1 in 2, 1 in 3, kind of good numbers. And then all of a sudden this year, he's got 16 goals in 13 games. What is this man playing at? And I believe the key thing with him, the crucial thing with him, is this €17 million buyout clause, where United could just snap him up. It's one of those things where a lot of people have been rumoured with him. I think Arsenal have been linked with him. Obviously, they're sort of lacking goals slightly in that number 9 position. A lot of clubs are linked with him because he is absolutely on fire, and you can get him for essentially, it's a meal deal, isn't it, these days, 17 million quid. They keep putting the price of the meal deal up. The fact that you can get this lad for 17 million, put the club card on it, you probably get him for 13 million. Again, he's one of those players that seems to be having an absolute purple patch. This is probably form that you couldn't expect him to replicate, not in the Premier League, probably not even in the Bundesliga going forward. He's obviously someone that is going through an absolute world-class time in terms of goal scoring, and is someone that United, for €17 million, may well take a punt on. For me, I don't expect him to repeat those numbers, but let's just say between now and the end of the season, he could get us 8, 9 Premier League goals, in the last 20 games. I'd take that for 17 million quid, because at the minute, we're over a third of the way through the season. We're pushing halfway through the season, and our attackers have got 3 between them. I'd take someone that can get 8 or 9. I think, whether it's a loan for Timo Werner, a loan for Malen as well, with a potential Sancho going the other way, I would do some sort of business in January. Jay mentions it all the time. United need reinforcements up front, and potentially we have the names of the 3 targets that United will be going after. That's going to be all from me. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. It's like almost dark still. It's so overcast. It's the most overcast I've ever seen in my life. It feels like we're in the middle of the night, and we're not. It is the morning. It is Tuesday. Thank you very much for joining us. Hit subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you in a bit.